If you run a multi-user website, who's logged into your WordPress website right now and what things are they doing? Do you know? Today I'll show you 3 ways that you can monitor user activity in your WordPress website. Hi everyone and welcome to the WP Quickie series, WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. Hi, I'm Will Brown, WordPress consultant and educator. I help WordPress designers and developers get more clients and grow their WordPress business. Before we start, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and ding that bell if you're on YouTube to get my latest video updates. Connect with me if you're on LinkedIn, and if you're watching on Facebook, give me a thumbs up for that. Remember to join our Facebook meetup page or group if you haven't done already. You can search for WordPress Sydney Meetup and you can post questions there, and I'll try my very best to answer those. If you're watching from the group, remember to visit streamyard.com/Facebook, and that links your avatar up so I can know who's commenting. And lastly, go and visit WPaustralia.org. So this is the community, the WordPress community in Australia. It shows you all the meetups that are currently active at the moment, and also it's got a link to our Slack channel so you can real-time talk to us WordPress people. I'll leave that up on the screen for a couple of seconds. You can have a look at that in the replay. The next in-person monthly evening WordPress Sydney meetup is on the last Monday of every month at 6 p.m. It's at the Microsoft Reactor, which is right next to Wynyard Station. You can RSVP on the meetup page, but come along and network in person with other WordPress community members. I'm going to be talking about creating a content strategy. So moving a little bit away from the technical side of WordPress for this meetup and talking more about strategy. So are you looking to get more website visitors? Do you know where to start in doing blogging? Do you know what a blog schedule is, keyword research? I'll cover all the high-level topics and what you need to know to put together a successful WordPress content strategy. So please do come along. It's November the 28th, 6 p.m. It's a Monday, and there might even be some pizza to munch on. So that's always a good incentive. Let me know who you are and where you're from in the comments. We've got Mr. Meowpoos. Hello there, some of our regular viewers. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're getting towards the end of the year, and the weather's looking pretty good. So I'm getting excited. Okay, let's dive into the main talk for today. It's going to be a real quickie one for this one. I hope so. This is Jean from the Central Coast. Hi, Jean. Thanks very much for joining us. Okay, so a question to ask is, if you run a multi-user website, and what do I mean by multi-user website? Well, you got people who are registering. So you could be using a WooCommerce website. People are registering themselves so they can then purchase some things and log back in to get invoices and look at all product specials, things like that. Maybe you're running a subscription website where people have paid for a subscription and they're logging in to get all their content stuff. You could be running an LMS, a learning management system. So you could be offering training videos. People are having to log in with the profile to access all the video content. Or you could just have multiple editors. You might allow people to do guest posting. You might have a whole bunch of editors that write content for you. All of these are covered by what I say a multi-user website. So people logging in, creating an account in your website, and doing things within your website. Now, there are many reasons that you might want to track activity across the site users. They could be, you might just be curious about login frequency. Maybe you've got 1,000 users and want to know, when they're logging in and when they're not logging in, only to find you've got 2 active users out of those 1,000. Concurrency, so you might want to know how many users are logging in at once, because that's going to affect things like server performance, RAM, CPU, that sort of stuff. So it's always good to know how many concurrent people are logging in. The capabilities as well. So you want to see what they are doing exactly in the WordPress website. What are their most often actions that they're doing? So you just kind of track that sort of stuff. And of course, you kind of want to keep an eye out for nefarious actions. So things that people are doing that you probably didn't expect them to do, and that might highlight some capabilities, some roles, some capability issues, or they could just be downright nefarious and horrible. So there's a whole reason why you might want to track user activities in WordPress, and having an activity tracking log puts a check and a balance in place. If things go out of control, they can quickly figure out what went wrong, who did it, and how to fix it. So it's always good having that log of people there. Now, does WordPress track site activity? The core WordPress app does not. It doesn't have any sort of tracking for user logins or site activity. The only thing it really logs is revisions for posts, and that's not very useful for tracking user activity and stuff like that. So the WordPress core is of no help for this type of feature. You're going to need to install a plugin. So just before we go to the plugins, how does WordPress store logged in users? It's a little bit of a complex process. I guess it's not as easy as just sticking something in the database. WordPress uses something called a WordPress underscore hash. It's a cookie to store authentication details on a login. Its use is limited to the admin screen. So whenever you go like slash wp-admin, that's when your login session is lifted from the cookie that's stored on the local machine and then provided to the web browser. So it doesn't ask you for username and password on every action and every refresh. That's basically what's happening there. So after login, WordPress sets the WordPress underscore logged underscore in underscore hash cookie, which indicates that when you're logged in, so it's got a date timestamp, and who you are for the most of the user interface. So it's got your user ID in there, basically. So cookies, as I said, they are stored on the local machine, not on the server, and not in the WordPress database. So tracking cookies is kind of impractical unless you've got a bit of software that's kind of tracking the logs in. You can't really just rely on cookies because they're on the people's local machines. And from a server point of view, you don't really have much access to that. Okay, so can I get real-time logged in user list? No, not from the way WordPress core stores login users or cookies because they're stored in the local computer. So there needs to be an additional tracking system of WordPress logins, perfectly stored in the database, so it's nice and central to be able to determine who's logged in and who is currently active. Because we don't have a logout feature, because most people don't log out of WordPress, you just kind of leave it hanging. It's really difficult to know who is really logged in. So some of these plugins that I'm going to show you next, they try and deal with that with things like timeouts. They try and kind of update the activity. So whenever somebody does something, no matter that person is active again. But it feel quite likely that people can just log into WordPress and leave it in a tab for hours and hours, even days, possibly weeks, and then go back to it some other time. So it's very difficult because there's no official kind of log out. You can log out of your WordPress session, but a lot of people just leave it, just close the browser and just leave it. So that doesn't really clean up nicely. So it's a little bit more on the difficult side to know precisely when people are logged in and logged out. But certainly we can get login details and we can kind of see if they're active in WordPress because they're doing things in there. But logout's a little bit more difficult to track. Okay, let's have a look at some plugins. The first one here is a WP Activity Log. It's probably the best free tool to monitor user activity in a WordPress website. There's the URL down the bottom, wp-security-audit-log from the WordPress repository on wordpress.org. The WP Activity Log, it allows you to see who is logged into WordPress by user and by user role. Now you can quickly see how many administrators and editors are logged into the site, which is really handy because if you kind of notice that you've got like a whole heap of administrators, that's probably not a good idea. You want to maybe have a look and see if they really do need admin access and bump them down to editor or some other custom role. But I do like this plugin. At the very top, it does show you the number of logged in sessions per role. So you got administrator, editor, author, contributor, subscriber, yada, 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 shop manager, and things like that for WooCommerce as well. So it's really good to get a brief glance when you go into your dashboard to see exactly who is logged in at the moment. You can also remotely terminate users for a very quick way to log everyone out. Now, I use this plugin as I don't have it installed all the time, but I use this plugin to log everyone out before I put a website into planned maintenance mode. So if we've got an update that we're going to be rolling out to a client website, I will load in WP Activity Log because it's really, really easy to do. You can see in the screen right, the top right-hand corner, it says terminate all sessions. So of course we communicate to the user base, but if anyone else is logged in and haven't logged out, we can click on the terminate all sessions and just nicely wraps up their sessions in the database, and logs them out. So there's no kind of quirky thing when someone's trying to do some stuff in WordPress. So I really do like this plugin for that particular feature. But you can see here, you can see there's a list of users there. It's got the user roles. It's got the session ID as well. So the session ID is something that's stored in the cookie as well for those. And it basically tells you when it was created and when it expires. So you can see here, it's got about 2-day expiry for the first one I'm looking at. So the 29th to the 31st. So they've got 2 days before that cookie will self-expire. And then they've got things like source IPs and what the thing they did last, the event they did the last one. and you can terminate individual users as well. So really good. I'll get rid of myself there so you can see the full thing. Really good little summary. That's basically all it does. It just monitors user activities. It tells you when they're logged in, and when they expire, and that great setting to terminate things, which is fantastic. The plugin also keeps a comprehensive list of all the user activity that you can customize at your needs for there. So there's quite a few settings, so you can limit the activity that it stores. So if you've got like 10,000 users, you obviously don't want to be storing everything that they do all the time. You might just want to have just monitor a few certain aspects of that. You can certainly filter that information down. But you can see here it's a little bit blurry. Sorry about that. But it's got the ID, the severity. Severity is a built-in check for WP activity logs. So things that are a little bit suspicious or something, you can maybe have a look at that. Maybe they shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. An example here is an exclamation mark. So someone has installed a plugin for there. So maybe not activate a plugin, deactivate a plugin. That might be a little bit suspicious, for users to do if they're not an admin. So you want to look into stuff like that. The green ones are just for the logins, so it's easy to see when people are logging in. So that just gives you a comprehensive list of all the user activity, logins, logouts, edits, publishes, plugin activation, deactivation, theme installation, that sort of stuff that people are doing throughout the site. It's not comprehensive to everything they do, but it kind of generates a very, very good high-level user activity that you can go and scroll through. And of course, it's all logged to the database. So just a word on that before we move on. When you've got these activity logs, these user monitors installed, then it's going to take a bit of a hit on your system, especially if you've got a lot of users. One of my clients has 24,000 users on their LearnDash thing, and sometimes we have to install and activate one of these logs, and it does slow down the machine considerably because all these people who are concurrent, all the stuff they're doing, it's all being written to the database, which is lots of super long queries, and it will have a significant impact on your machine. So you really only want to use these when you're investigating some issues, or if you really do need to track every single user activity to know exactly what they're doing. So just use them in caution. That's my advice for that. Okay, that's the first one, WP activity log. The second one that we're going to look at is User Insights. Now, User Insight, this is a paid service and a plugin, and it gives you a multitude of data for logged in users. So whereas WP Activity Log is just that, it's just a log, a chronological log of things that people have done when they're logged in, and you can filter it, you can search by it. By no means is it a reporting system, whereas User Insights is. It's more for a reporting system than it is a user log per se. So let's just have a look at this one. So as well as a list of logged in users, this service can provide you with more details in kind of user reporting data. So it's getting more data as to the amount of people they're in. So this here is just a simple login, and it tells you a list of usernames, the display name, which group that they're in. You can assign lifetime values if you've got a WooCommerce. I think these are snapshots from a WooCommerce website. When they were last active and country that they're in, if that's been defined on the user profile. So this is very much based on the amount of information that's being gathered from the WordPress user profile. So if you're, excuse me, if you're on like a LearnDash site or a WooCommerce site or a subscription site, you've probably got a pretty well-defined user profile because these plugins will ask you for all this data for that. But if you're just kind of monitoring just usual WordPress, registrations, you're probably not going to have much detailed information in user profile unless you ask them to do that. So here are just a list of normal users from there, but then this is where this plugin really comes in. So it allows you to extract user data specific to plugins, so the big plugins. So we've got WooCommerce, BuddyPress, Easy Digital Downloads, Ultimate Member, that's a subscription site, Gravity Forms, so who's signed up with Gravity Forms, and LearnDash as well. Some of the big players that you have lots of users in there, and the user profile is probably well defined for those. And we can see here, just in general, for this one, we can see there's charts of registered users, there's user groups, there's top countries, there's top user cities, and then they've got some ring graphs or user browsers and user platforms. So if you're a real data nerd, if you're looking to get a lot of data out of your user registrations, people who are logged into your website, this is probably a great tool. One site license, it starts at $99 US per year, so it's not going to break the bank. And it's really good, if you got one of these big plugins like WooCommerce or Ultimate Member or LearnDash, you can really suck up all that data, and get some really good insights on where they're from and what they're doing. So that's the second plugin that we can use. The third one here, I want to mention this one. This is a free plugin. It's called Stream. Now, the plugin logs all user activity across your WordPress website, and this plugin is probably more useful as a debugging tool to track suspicious user activity, but it does record user logins as well. But it was mainly developed for kind of debugging mode to see kind of what people are doing within the WordPress website. So let's have a quick look at the interface. So here's Stream. It's very native WordPress, so there's no fancy user interface or anything, and it's just got a lot of filters at the top. So you can see here, it just shows what people have done. It's a chronological list of what people do. You can kind of scroll up and scroll down. So here we see at the top, someone requested a password to be reset. Somebody updated the main menu. Somebody logged out. A post was updated. Somebody logged in. Somebody logged out. So it's just all that. Everything, pretty much everything that somebody can do within a capability. So a capability is part of a user role. So that's things like edit, publish, save, comment, all that sort of stuff. That's built into the user capabilities for subscribers, authors, editors, administrators. So each of those capabilities are tracked, and it is vast. So if you go to the settings on Stream, sorry, I don't have a picture for that. If you go into settings, you will see a whole list of user capabilities that Stream tracks, and they're all switched on. Okay, so if you're installing Stream, everything is switched on, which means it's, basically if you sneeze in front of WordPress, it's going to log that to the database. So depending on your needs, probably the first thing you want to do is go into the settings and then just uncheck some of the things, or uncheck everything, and then just turn on the capabilities that you want to monitor. So you might want to monitor things like blog post publishing. You might want to monitor plugin updates, plugin installs, plugin deactivations, things like that. So you want to switch those on. Password resets, maybe you want to record how many times people are resetting the passwords, so you can maybe do some more user documentation that show people how they can do that themselves. But things like you want to go in and just choose those specific capabilities and switch them on. Otherwise, you're going to be swamped with a whole load of records. You can purge records as well, so you can tell Stream to keep it for X amount of time and then purge them afterwards, which is handy if you've got 24,000 concurrent users on your LearnDash system. Otherwise, it's just a really good chronological login. I use this a lot to debug things. And so I had a client a few years back who, for some reason, people were able to log in, even though the registration form is apparently disabled. We had all these people creating user logins, hundreds and hundreds of user logins. And we found out that there was an error in the registration script that the theme was using, which we then fixed and reported back to the company. But we couldn't have figured out what was happening unless we had a tool like Stream that could really monitor, who's registering, where they're coming from, what the IP is, what they're doing, and then kind of what files they're hitting and that. So that was really, really useful in that particular case. And again, with all these activity loggers, they are going to have an impact on your WordPress performance, the database, especially if you've got a huge number of users. So just be aware of that when you're turning these loggers on. That's it. Those are my 3 top plugins for tracking who's logged into your WordPress website and what activities they are performing. I would love to see it in core. I'd love to see a basic thing core that tracks who's logged in for those, but that's probably not going to happen. So we have to rely on these plugins and these services. Drop any questions that you have in the chat, or if you have any questions after you think about it, you can drop it in the Facebook group, and I'm happy to deal with that. There's me. You can connect with me if you haven't done so already. I'll just put my face back up here. So my main website now is willbrown.com. It's going to be releasing a lot more content on that, and have a look at that in the new year. There's going to be a few courses out there that you might want to jump on. But please connect with me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on Twitter as well. So I'm not seeing anything else coming through question-wise. So for next week, I'm going to be talking about the WordPress cron. So what is WordPress cron? How does it work? And why you should probably not use it. So if you want to figure out what WP cron is and how to actually make it work properly, then tune in to me next week, same time, and take care. I'll see you then. Bye, everyone.